On today's episode of Locked On Suns, the three biggest surprises from the first portion of the Phoenix Suns season. The offensive evolution, the big trades, the fourth quarter. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show, wherever you get your podcasts. A big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Tuesday. Welcome into the show. We are free and available everywhere, so if you have not already, go ahead and hit follow, hit subscribe, wherever you're finding the show. Become an everydayer. Get locked on to the Phoenix Suns all season long, right here on the show. 3 big surprises from the first half or so of the Suns season coming your way in just a moment. First, today's show brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. All right. 3 things. 3 surprising things. The biggest surprises of the Suns season. Did a little bit of an overview with Gabe Guerrero on Friday last week of where the Suns are, where they can get. Can they get to 50 wins? Has this season been a disappointment? So I would recommend that show for the big picture. And this will be pretty big picture, but we're going to get about basically into what we thought would happen versus what really has happened. And the first surprise is the DeAndre Ayton trade worked. It's easy to get maybe lost in how big that is, or forget how big that is, because obviously the Durant trade had to work, the Beal trade had to work. And those things are still fleshing themselves out in terms of chemistry and how the big 3 play off of one another. But we kind of knew that. And I think most of us felt like, from a talent standpoint, those guys are bound to play well. It's just a matter of how well, right? Kevin Durant's a Hall of Famer. You know he's going to come in and be great. He had no chemistry with anybody, and they still won 6 playoff games with him, right? Bradley Beal, it's like, obviously, health continues to be a question. The adjustment to being a third wheel will be an adjustment, but it's Bradley Beal. We've seen him do it next to John Wall. We've seen him do it next to Russell Westbrook. We've seen him do it on his own. We've seen him do it with Porzingis and Kuzma. I feel pretty confident Bradley Beal is going to score. And beyond that, we'll see. The DeAndre Ayton trade was much more of a risk. For it to come so early, or I guess late in the offseason would be the better way to put it, and to represent such a significant shift in what the team was going to be, that's huge, you know? And it happened right away where we kind of just had to roll with it, and then all of a sudden camp is upon us and games are happening, and all right, this is what the team is. But let me just throw something interesting out here, all right? The Suns are, right now, 14th in the NBA in offense, okay? Not great, needs to improve, but 14th with a 115.3 defensive rating, okay? And that is with a lot of guys in and out of the lineup. Jusuf Nurkic, obviously, the quote-unquote anchor of the defense. No Mikal Bridges for any of that, of course, and on down the line. Last year, the Suns finished the season 9th in defense. 113.8 defensive rating. So they are worse. And their defensive rating this season would be closer to what they have posted this season, if you were to transport it to last season, the Suns would be more like 20th, 19th, 20th defensively. But how much do you attribute that to Ayton versus other guys? I don't know. We're not going to have that disagreement now. But the main point I'm making is the Suns are 5 spots lower in defense this season, which is probably the biggest thing you would say was the trade-off in that deal. They send out Ayton, they get Nurkic, and they get Grayson Allen. And they get Keon Johnson, who they cut. But without any doubt in my mind, Nurkic has been a boon to this offense. Okay? Last year, the offensive rating was 115.1. They were 17th in offense when the regular season ended last year. And that's a lot because Booker and Chris Paul both missed a lot of time, and then Durant missed time and everything else, but the numbers are the numbers. This year, the Suns' offensive rating is 119.4. If you were to go to since January 1st, their offense, I believe, is 4th in the NBA, behind only the Jazz, the Warriors, and the Clippers. And when you have all of the big three on the court, the offensive rating has been even better than that. Let's put the big three plus Nurkic. So just any lineups with the big three, 128.3 offensive rating. Big three and Nurkic, 130.5. So he has made that group better. That was not going to be the case with DeAndre Ayton. Period. Okay? Let's add Grayson Allen, which is basically the starting lineup that they've been rolling with for a long time now. 131.4 offensive rating. So the Suns were able to trade Ayton for two guys who complement and improve upon what the big three has, while only falling down 5 spots in terms of defense. So they take a decent hit defensively, but they're able to lean into what I still believe is this team's ultimate identity, which is offense, and more offense, and then getting timely stops with scheme, with versatility and personnel and IQ and whatever. And those guys help them get there. Grayson Allen leads the NBA in three-point percentage. Leads the NBA. Jusuf Nurkic, it's a good time to check in on his rim protection numbers. I would say Grayson Allen's point of attack defense has been about what you would hope, but again, it has certainly not been worse. His ability to fit into the playground basketball that this team wants to run, that guys like Durant are really dedicated to. That sounds like it's a religion or something that they want to play, right? And Allen could not have been a better fit. And they're now in position to re-sign him and get a really solid role player in with this core. Jusuf Nurkic is allowing 57% shooting at the rim, or within 6 feet. So basically, let's say in the paint, right? Versus the Suns' overall number of about 64. So that's almost 7% better than the team overall, meaning he's making a positive impact there. So the only case you could make that the Ayton trade is not working, I think, is a pie-in-the-sky concept of what you think Ayton could have been, which is a story we were trying to tell ourselves for years watching this team. Instead, they've gotten guys who actually fit, who actually make this team better, and who make less money combined than he did. It's a home run. And again, you might not see that as a surprise, but I think for all of that to be true, that's a huge surprise and a big reason why the Suns are in the position that they're in. Next up, let's talk about a negative. Not all the surprises are good ones. We'll get to the first negative takeaway, negative surprise of the season next. First, today's show brought to you by Prize Picks, the best place to play daily fantasy sports. It's demon time on Prize Picks, and you can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks. On top of that, quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. And don't forget, it is not you versus an opponent. It is not you versus a league or a pool. It's not even always you versus a demon or a goblin. It is you versus the Prize Picks player projections. You pick more, you pick less, and you watch the money roll in. That's it. You look at the projection, you say, is the player going to do more of that or less than that compared to what Prize Picks has? And that's how you win. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA to sign up and use the code LockedOnNBA when you make your first deposit to get it matched up to $100. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Keeping it rolling, let's talk about one negative surprise. And my guess is that you might have an idea of where I'm going. The Phoenix Suns remain god-awful on defense. Terrible. No ifs, ands, or buts. No way around it. No exceptions to the rule or nothing. The Suns have been outscored by 190 points in the fourth quarter this season. The next worst team has been outscored by 99 points. And that's the Miami Heat. Somehow, both of those two teams are above 500 by a pretty good margin. The Suns, of course, 33-22. The Heat, 30-25. But the other company that they're keeping includes the Pistons, the Hawks, and the Wizards in the bottom 6. The Warriors are actually tied with the Hawks in there as well. So it's not a death sentence in the NBA to be bad in the fourth quarter. It doesn't mean that you can't be successful. The Pelicans are also in the negative, and they have an identical record to the Suns. But again, the Suns are head and shoulders worse. So even saying, okay, the Warriors are minus 62, the Suns are 3 times worse than that. They are 2 times worse than the 29th ranked team in Miami. It's inexplicable how bad they've been. Legitimately, I don't have we've talked about it all year. I don't need to get cute with you guys and try to pretend like I have some sort of answer. But there are a couple things you would have to look at, right? They are only shooting 32% from 3 in the fourth quarter. The only team even close to them in the top 10 fourth quarter teams is the Rockets, who are shooting 33% from deep in the fourth quarter, but they have a plus 44 point differential. And then the Magic are actually only shooting 32% and have a plus 41 point differential in the fourth quarter. But that's the Magic. They don't have a lot of shooting on their team. Frankly, neither do the Rockets. So that's 2 teams where they're sort of just continuing their normal performance, and it just so happens to be that they've succeeded in the fourth quarter with that performance. The Suns are a 38.7% three-point shooting team in the fourth quarter overall. And again, in the fourth quarter, they are 32.3% from three-point range. That's unavoidable. That matters here. But the other obvious thing here is the pace. Okay, the Suns have it's improved actually. For a while, you could track without a doubt they were the slowest team in the fourth quarter. That has improved, and that is a huge indicator for this problem getting better. They've dug themselves such a deep hole that they're not going to end up as one of the best teams in the fourth by the end of the season. They're going to probably end up in the negative. It's going to be ugly, but it can trend in the right direction, and pace will be a big reason why. They are now up to 15th in pace. Okay? That's not far behind the Kings and the Thunder and the Jazz and some of these teams that we think of, the Pelicans, as pretty fast-paced squads. And, the other thing is, look, the fastest teams in the NBA often are the worst teams at the end of the day because they turn it over a lot. They don't have a lot of structure and chemistry and everything else. So outside of the Pacers and the Bucks and the Lakers, who are up there at the very top in terms of pace, the other teams are really bad. Washington, Atlanta, San Antonio, Detroit, even Utah. So the Suns are kind of right where they want to be. Maybe you get a little faster, and we'll talk about that to close out the show, but I think that's a promising sign. The other negative one, though, in the fourth quarter, that goes into another shock here for me, just overall, even setting aside the fourth quarter, that has been a trend for the Suns all year, is the turnovers. They have 287 turnovers in fourth quarters this season. Sorry, they have 227 turnovers in fourth quarters this season and only 287 assists. So if you think overall, the Suns this year have a pretty close to a 2-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. Maybe let's call it a 1.7-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. In fourth quarters, that is 1.3-to-1. So the ball movement has been an issue. The brain farts, for lack of a better word, have been a big issue. And that has to be a surprise. I know we've all talked over and over about how the Suns don't have a point guard. Is that part of the problem here? Maybe. Maybe it is. I still don't really think they're going to get one, because that would mean becoming an even smaller team. Neither here nor there for this conversation. But even with that said, if you would have told me that a team with Booker, Durant, Beal, and Nurkic even would be bottom 5 in terms of coughing the ball up, that would be kind of unthinkable, frankly. Like, I don't have a better way to put it, And hold on, let me actually make sure I'm getting that bottom 5 right. That's what they've been since January 1st. I would imagine it might even be worse for the whole season. Yeah, they're 26th. The past 2 months, they're 25th overall. But the fourth quarter is a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about, which is why I wanted to include them together. The amount of times that somebody's just been standing at the top of the arc trying to throw an entry pass or reset the offense or communicate with the teammate to get somebody in position to run something, and the ball's just been picked completely, or obviously early in the season, some of the inbounds passes and hit-ahead passes that were just straight up stolen because of lack of communication and everything else. That was, and still is, right? I just said since January 1st, it really hasn't improved. That's just crazy. Truly. It's truly a crazy thing to see. And I think it has to be a surprise, even if you did feel like not having Chris Paul around or somebody similar was going to be a problem. That's so much worse than any of those problems you would have imagined. So it is a big shock. I think it is a big thing holding their overall offense back. And it's certainly one of the big reasons why they've crumbled in so many fourth quarters. Let's close on a positive note. One area where the Suns have completely transformed from what they were under Monty Williams to what they have been this season. We'll get into that next. First, today's show brought to you by Betterhelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chests. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased about your life. There's a ton of stuff out there, frankly, that is making us even feel maybe more anxious than we think we are. There's so much out there talking about this stuff that I sometimes feel like it can be even more intense without talking about solutions. And BetterHelp is there to be that solution. I want to tell you about how I really feel about something, just like you can talk about how you really feel with BetterHelp. I really hate covering a team that has so many injuries. Okay? I don't like talking about them. Even with Chris Paul, it bums me out. It feels a little existential and weird to be talking so deeply about something that is affected by randomness. I don't love it as a fan. I don't love it as an analyst. It stresses me out. It bums me out. It makes me overthink things. I don't like it. That's how I really feel. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get those things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to try it out and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Closing out the show, one last surprise to talk through. The Suns have owned the possession game this season. Owned it. Talked about their own turnovers. Besides that, they have been dominant in every single category that you would want when it comes to the turnover battle. Okay? They are 8th in the NBA in offensive rebounding rate, so they really do a good job crashing the boards on their own missed shots. They allow teams to crash the glass on their misses at times too, but that has been improving over the course of the season. So on the whole, they are 24th in that category. But again, let's just say since January 1st, they have been, even worse. Okay. We'll call that a continued issue. It's definitely improved since the beginning of the season, though. They do not foul very much. This is not so much fully the possession game, but they do not foul much, and they get to the line a ton. So maybe possession game's not the word for that, but the easy points game, we'll call it, they have dominated. They are basically fluctuating between first and second in offensive free throw rate, and they are 7th in defensive free throw rate, meaning that they foul the 7th fewest, lowest percentage of any team. But the single biggest surprise of all of this, and one of the biggest things I think you have to give it up to Frank Vogel about, is that the Suns have completely transformed as a transition team. Okay? They are 9th in transition points added per possession. Per 100 possessions. So their offensive rating this season is basically 3 points better than it normally would be because of how much they have excelled scoring in transition. And I've talked about this a bunch, but I would say especially running off of misses. Okay, and these things go hand in hand. So part of why I got stuck on the opponent offensive rebounding rate is because the Suns are trying to run when opponents miss shots, meaning they're going to give up some defensive rebounds. That's how that goes. But overall, when they have gotten those opportunities, they have been crazy efficient at it. Another wrinkle in this, though, is that they're not doing it a lot. They're bottom 5 in terms of transition frequency. Again, might be something you would point to not having a typical traditional primary playmaker out there for. But hey, I will take a low frequency and a high efficiency over the opposite, which is a high frequency and not being very good at it. Lastly, the Suns have the 7th best transition defense in the NBA. And that's with themselves turning the ball over so much, right? Again, all these things are connected. One facet of the game bleeds into the next. The Suns give up turnovers so much that they give their opponent easy pathways to the basket in transition. And yet, their transition defense off of misses has been excellent. And that is probably the best single thing you would say about Frank Vogel. So they're the 7th best overall transition defense, but they are the 4th best transition defense off of live rebounds, while also being a top 10 offensive rebounding team. So somehow the Suns are simultaneously getting their own misses for offensive rebounds and putbacks and getting back in transition. You're not supposed to be able to do both. I don't know if that's just fluky. I don't know if there's some random shooting stuff or one game or few games that have affected some of that. But we're 55 games in, and that has held true. And that is very, very impressive. And when you add that all up, yes, okay, opponents can sometimes get offensive rebounds. The Suns will cough up turnovers. The other Frank Vogel hallmark, though, is that the Suns have also forced opponent turnovers at a pretty high rate lately. So since they've gotten healthy, this has been an evolution where now they are doing a pretty good job of forcing opponent turnovers. Better and better as the season has gone along. Another Vogel hallmark. Transition defense, paint defense, which is always going to be somewhat shaky. Nurkic is by no means elite, but passable right now. And turnover creation. Those are the things Vogel does. He has gotten the team to play faster. He has gotten the team to emphasize free throws and trips to the basket. And all of that is so much different than what the Suns were looking at times in the past, where they did not force a ton of turnovers. They did not get to the free throw line. They were not always a good offensive rebounding or defensive rebounding team. They did not play particularly fast. Their transition defense was fine, but could fluctuate. They're kind of checking most of the boxes now where you will go into playoff games and you feel like we're not going to beat ourselves. Right? We're not going to beat ourselves. We're going to give ourselves a puncher's chance. If our perimeter defense or our point of attack defense or inconsistent rim protection or fourth quarter stuff is our issue and that's why we lose, or we don't take enough threes and that's why we lose, okay. Those are personnel problems. Those are game-to-game things. You lose. But they're not going to lose because they didn't give themselves extra possessions, because they played too slow, because they didn't make the opposing offense uncomfortable in any way and let the offense, have 5 turnovers every game. No. They're going to be competitive. And they're not going to have to constantly be overcoming these things. And that's so big. It might feel small, but over the course of 82 and even over the course of a 7-game series, those really, really matter. And it's a huge testament to Frank Vogel. And again, a big shock considering what the personnel is, what this roster looks like, and what this Suns team had been under Monty Williams. That'll wrap us up. Tomorrow, stay tuned for the 3 biggest things to watch for the rest of the season. We did surprises so far. We'll do what to watch going forward with Stephen Perjone of Bright Side of the Sun and PHNX. So hit follow or subscribe to get that show in your feed and many more throughout the rest of the season. Enjoy the remaining few off days before Suns basketball takes over our lives once again, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.